Hey folks, thank you for joining us again for another exciting episode of YOML. This is the Year of Magical Learning podcast, and today we are on Reflection 342, and let's talk about Harry, Prince Harry.
The book we're going to be doing today is Spare by the author Prince Harry, who, if you don't know, is the son of King Charles, and the grandchild of Queen Elizabeth. Yeah. So the book is called Spare. It's called Spare because like you
He's a
have an
spare.
heir and he's a spare.
He's a
His
spare. Yeah.
brother's the heir, and yeah, he's the spare. And that's what his dad used to actually call him as a joke. So the book, huh?
Charles.
Yeah, Charles. Yeah. So this book, I mean, I'm not ashamed to admit this. I'm a lover of the British monarchy. I don't know why. I don't know what it is, but like there's something about I don't know what it is, but for some reason I get pulled into it, and I really enjoy the pageantry, just the history, the mystery, like all the things that go into the British monarchy.
Mhm.
And for whatever reason, just kind of pulls me in whenever there's stories. And personally, I remember Diana's death. I was like, I think she died at 96. So I was like 12 years old. I just remember the news. That was back when the news was like 24-hour news of CNN or whatever it was at that
Mhm.
time. It was people didn't watch CNN all day long, but that was the only place you could get this kind of news coverage. And, it was at the front end of the whole explosion of media, and she was probably the most popular person in the world. I mean, I just remember every news channel is, I hate to equate these two together, but it was almost like 9/11. I don't know if you remember Princess Diana's death, but it was just like everything stopped. It seemed like the whole world stopped when she died. So like you just seen these kids growing up and they kind of became a part of everybody's lives, and you just rooted for them. It was a horrible situation, right? So my wife and I, how we did these books together throughout the course of this whole journey. Probably like usually like once a month we would do a book together, something along
Mhm.
those lines. So when Spare came out, we're both, like when Harry and Meghan got married, her and one of her friends went to this English pub in the bar district here in Indianapolis at like 6 a.m. to have tea and biscuits and mimosas and like, whatever, to go watch the royal wedding live, you know what I mean, and get dressed up
Mhm.
and stuff. So
Mhm.
like she's always been a huge fan of this stuff as well. So when this book came out, we were both like, okay, that's our next book together. So we read it, and I'm going to give you my initial impressions of the book in general, because this reflection really isn't about the book. I was super disappointed in this book, honestly. I don't know how to describe it necessarily, but like the first half was good in terms of getting some insights into Harry's life. But basically, after his mother passed away, this dude has been. How about this? I feel horrible for Harry after reading this book. He's like been traumatically stunted since he was like 13 years old. And it's really horrible to see. And we'll dive into some of this stuff because that actually factors into the reflection. But I kind of just felt bad for him the entire time. I mean, that one event defines his entire life, and still defines his entire life today. And it's just horrible to hear him talk about it because he never really processed it until he was in his 30s. But on to the reflection. So this reflection title is Virtual Meets Reality. Coincidentally is the right word. When I was reading this book with my wife, I was also just doing my own books. We would only read whenever we were together, or do like an audiobook together, like on a
Mhm.
walk or whatever. So I always have other books that are going on that I'm just doing myself on a day-to-day basis. And one of the books that I had been reading during this time was this book called The Grieving Brain, which I don't know if you remember. We did that just a couple weeks ago, I think. Yeah, it was through 29. Yeah. So yeah, we did this. Yeah, like just a couple weeks ago. It was the Ultimate Learning Journey was that one. So I had been reading at the same time The Grieving Brain as Prince Harry's book,
Mhm.
and there was this concept they talked about in The Grieving Brain, that they talked about how our brain operates on these virtual maps, and that's what we use to navigate our lives and the world around us. Essentially, we mirror the reality that's around us in our head. You remember where all the chairs are in your house. If you
Mhm.
close your eyes right now, you know where everything is and it has a place, right? You know where your clothes are. You know where your mother is located. You know where your kids are. That's how you navigate around through the world. And it's this almost virtual map, right? That lives in your mind, that is mirroring the reality that you see every single day. So when something goes missing from that space, that's when there's this huge, just fucking, what do you call it? Like
Glitch.
confusion, mass confusion. It's a glitch. You're in your mind, you're thinking that chair is right there, and then you walk by it every day, and you're like, the chair's not there. Where's the chair? I don't know if you've ever experienced this before, but move furniture around in your house or something like that, or you get rid of something, even if it didn't matter. Like when you walk something you didn't even use, and you
Mhm.
walk by it, and you're just like, where is that thing?
Yeah,
Like,
you already created a map and you
right,
expect it to be there. It's
exactly.
gone.
So I'm reading this and I'm learning this from the Grieving Brain, right? And I'm hearing a lot of ahas in my own life, just given my feelings after Amelia passed away, being transported back into that NICU all the time in my head, and I could not, like, I could tell you right now exactly where everything was in that room. But like, I know it wasn't there anymore. I would wake up in the middle of the night with like, it felt like my mind was split in two. It was so confusing because you felt like you were somewhere else and you felt like there was a different reality going on, and it was hard sometimes to tell the difference. Like, it really was. So this is the virtual map in your mind, not matching the reality around you, right? And having to reconcile that as a part of the grieving and learning process, right? So now put that to we'll box and shelve that little concept, I guess, right now. So now I'm reading this book, the Spare book, right? Learning about Harry's life. I was shocked to find out, probably the most shocking thing that I learned in this book was his mother Diana died when he was 13 years old. For the next over decade of his life, he actually thought she was still alive. He did not believe that she died. He thought that she was playing a big trick on all of them to get away from the paparazzi, to get away from whatever. He literally was like, no, mommy's still alive. Like, it's fine. She was always still alive to him his entire childhood growing up after she died. He could not reconcile that. He's like, I never cried. I never processed it. I never grieved. I just kept going on, going, she'll reveal herself when she's ready. I know how much she was tormented by the press, and like, this is him and his brother William, thought, both of them thought that this was what was going on too. I was just blown away by hearing that. And it wasn't until he was almost 30 years old when he finally visited the site, saw the photos of the crash scene, did some other stuff, and was, basically was convinced, like, oh my God, my mom's actually dead. And then that was when he finally cried for the first time his entire life. Think about that for a second. Like, this poor kid, for his entire almost young adult life into his early adulthood, into his almost middle ages, was walking around with a virtual map that didn't meet reality every single day. And when those two things finally collided, it was like, this is when the biggest epiphanies in the book started happening for Harry, right? And the biggest changes of his life, and him come to terms with reality, right? Like, that's an incredibly important part of the grieving process, is when that is what grieving is. You have to have virtual meet reality, right? You can't be living in one world and not have a mirror up with
your virtual need to be updated.
Right, exactly. Otherwise, you're in for a world of hurt. But here's the one thing that I've discovered, and I think that Harry discovered too in his own learning about his life, is once that virtual meets reality, and you finally, the fact that that thing is no longer there, the thing you cared so much about is no longer in your life anymore, in the physical reality of this world, you can then try to find new ways to connect to that person, and you realize, they're still there with you, right? Like, I think he probably actually redeveloped a relationship with his mother later on in his life when he finally realized, oh my God, she's actually gone. I'm not just waiting around hoping that she's going to pop in here. Like, if you actually think about this, what is the difference between, what would be the difference if Diana just went to Fiji and disappeared off the face of the earth versus dying? Knowing that she's in Fiji, does that mean that you have a relationship with her? If your father leaves you and goes to Siberia and you never see him for the next 20 years of your life, is he dead? Is he not? Is he a part of your life? Is he not? Like, how do you carry on a relationship with somebody that, you don't have any way to communicate with, alive or dead at this point in time, right? So this is one of those fundamental learning lessons for myself of the ultimate learning journey of the grieving process, was figuring out, like, hey, there is other ways to carry on a relationship with somebody, and they don't necessarily leave you when they leave this world. And then you can re-update your virtual map and include them in your virtual map at that point in time, and have that still now be a part of your reality going forward. And that's what Amelia and I do every single day. So I hope that Harry gets to do that someday, and I hope that anybody that's going through this grieving process gets to do that someday. But it's just such a fucking hard ass thing, man. It is a really hard ass thing, and I feel really bad for him. I feel really bad for anybody else going through that process. And, once you can finally marry up virtual with reality, I think that's when you can finally start to figure out the next steps forward in your life. So anyway, yeah, I'd love to get your thoughts.
I tend to agree with you. When things are not what you expected, you will have more of a glitch. I don't know what the terms in terms of a computer glitch, but it essentially throw you off course because certainly you're navigating one map, but then you hit a brick wall, right? Because imagine you have a map on your car navigation, right? And it's clearly show, hey, there's a road, but certainly you hit the wall, right? So
Right.
that creates a shock to your system. It created shock to the whole entire thing because your map was old and reality keep moving. And then whenever your map has never been updated, then you have all
You're
sorts
stuck
of
in the past.
shock.
Right.
You shock because it doesn't align with what you expect.
Right.
And your system becomes shocked. And when you're shocked, it's going to create this havoc on your emotions. And I think this is where the grieving brains, when we talk about the grieving brains before, is, where you're completely unable to navigate your world because it's inconsistent between the two worlds.
Right.
And so when there is a significantly a atomic bomb event, sometimes you lost the ability to update your virtual map using the input because it's so painful that your input is overwhelmed and you start blocking. And so for a time, this is why I think in psychology they say there's like some 5 steps to whatever. The
The
first is
process.
denial,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Denial meaning because you can't, because it's too painful to process it, and so you
Right.
refuse to process it. So all the signal has been blocked. You as a human person, whatever physiology ability that you have, you're able to block it using your brains or whatever. You have the ability to completely block it
It's just buried stuff deep down. Like it's not like it doesn't exist, like
because your brain isn't processing that inputs.
yeah, it's the body keeps the score, right?
It doesn't allow the signals to go to the brains anymore because the brain says, "Hey, I'm gonna bury myself under whatever that
Right.
is comfort, right? The other one I can't take it. It's gonna bury himself in that. So whatever else happened in reality, it never updated, and therefore a lot of people, depending on how much that event affects that person, the longer the denial would be, right? If it affects that person really, really much, then the denial could be a long time. And one of the things that I realized is that normally a person would, be in denial, and then they get into a point where they accept the reality. I mean, hey, that object or that thing or whatever that I'm attached to is no longer there.
Right.
And you accept them, and then you update your special map in your brain. And then one other thing that this is what I'm realizing, one of the things that people do is they decide what to do with it, right? Because a lot of time what people do is say, well, that thing is gone, I'm gonna remove it from my life. But one of the things that I've seen you do, Chris, which is different, is that when you get to the point where you accept that your daughter is not there anymore, but instead of saying she's gone, you essentially put her into a different place. So
Yeah.
say, hey, because the thing is, when you do that, say, hey, I put her in a place where it still makes sense to me, where I'm not looking at something and expecting, and I'm not creating a glitch. But at the same time, you're able to move on and continue to have a relationship
Right.
with your daughter. And I think
Yeah.
that's the aha that I just realized that what you decide to do
The
with
new the new
new
yeah.
reality
Right.
after
Right.
you have accepted that
Right.
this thing has changed.
Right.
That is important. I've accepted that this thing's gone and I'm not gonna think about it again. So
Right.
you basically removed it from your virtual map.
Right. My favorite pair of shoes broke and I had to throw it away and it's just not
You
coming
throw it
back.
away
So
and it's
right.
gone. Right? So the thing is, your brain has the incredible power to say, well, you can decide that you're going to move this little thing to another space. And it doesn't have to be a physical space. It could be, one of those spaces that you have the ability to maintain. So it doesn't clash with reality because whatever the space you put Amelia into, it doesn't have a corresponding reality space,
It's a mental
but at
map.
the
It's
same
like your
time, because
mental
your brain is
pals.
able to do that, is able to not have the glitch anymore, but also have the ability to continue to have a relationship with that person, with that object or whatever it is. And I think that is one of the things that I think it's great that you did that because it's not about like, whether or not you have to face reality totally because reality is just part of it's just one part of the whole entire virtual mapping, because your virtual mapping is more than just 3 dimensions,
Yeah, of course.
right?
I mean,
So
your imagination is. I mean, I can imagine,
you can imagine
what Clubby looks
you go
like in
into
my
the
mind or
past,
something
right? You
like
can
that,
imagine
right?
the
Yeah,
future, you can
right.
imagine any creative. So your brains has ability to contain more than just the reality. Reality is just part of it. So basically, you're thinking of reality, right? Reality, I'm thinking in terms of logic, right? Reality, you have 4 dimensions, right? You have your 3 physical dimensions, and you have the fourth dimension of time. So even in your mind, you can say, well, I was at this age and now I grow up to be here. So you can traverse the dimension inside of your head. In addition to that, you can be in multiple other dimensions as well. The bottom line is what your brains can contain is much more than what reality can provide. So,
Oh yeah,
so reality is just a sub parts of the whole thing in your brain. So in your brain, you can decide to have more than just what reality tells you, as long as the reflective of reality and what's in your brain in that spatial corresponding space doesn't clash. And when doesn't clash, it won't have this glitch. And the thing
right.
is, one of the things that people have a hard time trying to navigate is because it clashes with reality and the counterpart of the virtual map. It creates a glitch, and when they create a glitch, it shocks the system, and the system cannot function. It's like a blue screen of death, basically. It just
Yep.
freezes. And so,
You have to
unfortunately,
acknowledge when the glitch exists. Like, I mean, like you can't just bury that down. Like if you try to go on through life like Harry did,
mhm.
of saying no, like this is
Yeah, I
not
mean,
reality.
he can't navigate life if he does never recognize, accept the fact that in reality that person no
Right,
longer exists, and they or he doesn't see her anymore.
right.
And so he has a very hard life just
Yep.
because he is always have a shock to his system, and his emotions are completely out of whack,
Right.
right?
Like
He does many different things that is not normal. Why
no.
is it? Because his system is shocked. His emotions are completely chaotic,
Right.
right? And that it just drives you crazy because you have an emotion that's not what you deem as harmony. And that just creates this misery for your existence. And
Right.
I think this is one of the reason why, you would, pity, feel sorry for a guy, because it's something that he had to deal with. And a lot of times it requires a very strong psychological mind to endure this kind of misery.
And when you're 13 years old, like when you're a child, I mean, talk about I can't imagine being 13 years old and going through this. Like, I mean, you're that's enough already hard enough to process being a 13-year-old and how to
I
navigate
mean,
this world.
being 13
You
year
know,
old normally, right,
it's
you are
hard as hell.
already being bombarding with all kinds of
Emotions and
emotions,
yeah,
that
yeah, and
flooding your emotions, and now you
yeah.
have this thing. I mean, I'm not surprised that he and William went into this alternative reality that their mother is still alive, because I don't know if anyone can take that much,
And we're not even talking
sensory
about normal
input.
people. We're talking about people where the whole fucking world's eyes are on you too, as they're watching you.
I mean, I can't imagine how it is, but I would say, in a way, it's almost like you're in a trance or some kind of a nightmare that it's not of your own, because
Yep.
you have the shock to your system and your brain's trying to process it, and then but there's also bombardment of the media, and the world is telling you this and that, and all this gossip, all discussion. It just creates so massive. It's like a tsunami. It's just so much sensory is coming to you, and there's nothing for you to anchor on. There's nothing for you to hold on and say, I'm going to hold on and wait for the tsunami to pass. And
So Harry did what a lot of people do. He retreated to drugs, alcohol, partying, acting out, running away, moving to Africa, joining the military, just to get away from. I mean, all these things that he did his entire life was
not a normal kid,
downstream.
what a normal kid does,
Right. I
right?
mean,
Because
this
he's
is
trying to find his footing.
always.
He's completely lost.
He's been lost since the day that his mom passed away. As I'm listening to his own words in his own book, that's all that I can hear the entire time. Even with finding Meghan Markle, his wife, this is really just his mom 2.0. Everything is a traumatic trigger that they're going through as a family. That's why they fled to California. This is why they stopped being a royal, because he was like, I want to protect my family. I don't want something bad to happen to them. I can't lose my wife. He cannot process the fact that he has no control over this stuff, and that he needs to just process what he's gone through and all the stuff that he's been through in his entire life. I mean, it's just got to be overwhelming, honestly, which is why I said this book is kind of sad. It's really sad. It wasn't a book where I was like, you're thinking you're going to get an inside look at the royal life or something like
You
that.
get
Like,
some inspirations and have some kind of a little insight of the good life or whatever.
right, yeah,
It's more of like, hey, this is
horrible.
a tragedy that no
Yeah,
one wants to. I don't think anyone can endure this kind of thing without having some kind of if you're a 13-year-old boy or girl, your emotions are completely out of whack to begin with, and to have the tremendous shock to your life, it's very hard for anyone to carry it. It's very heavy. And then on top of that, you have so many people looking upon you. It's one of those things where you can't hide, right? You can't hide, you can't run away. I think you're
like
gonna have to do
invent a
something
whole
with,
different reality. I mean, that's the only thing you could do, and that's
yeah.
what he did.
You have to go into whatever sanctuary you can create in your own mind to get away from it all. It's one of those things where no one wants to be, hey, I want to be like Prince Harry. I want to be like Prince William. I mean, it's just, you know, sometimes you just don't have the strength to carry it on
Yep.
just because it's too difficult, too heavy.
I think I've told you a little bit about my family's history of my mother's brothers and sisters, like
Mm,
with my grandma,
right.
adopting her four nieces and nephews that were under the age of 6. I can't begin to tell you how. I'm not going to get too deep into this because this isn't my story to tell, but they were all six and under there was four of them. So
Mhm.
six, there was like a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old, and like a 6-month-old. And like they all, this, even at that age, this has been the number one defining thing of all of their entire lives. All of them have never processed this fully. And like it still comes out in weird ways, not sorry, weird's the wrong word. It still comes out in ways where you're 50 years old, and like this happened when you were 3 years old, like how is this still, I mean, like it just comes out like in really, 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 I don't want to say weird. I don't want to say, inopportune. I don't want to say, like, it's just so hard for a child in particular to process these things, right? Like you just,
I mean, you think about it, even the soldiers who goes to the war have PTSD. I
oh
mean,
yeah,
talking about 18-year-old, male have PTSD because the thing is, if somebody who is a child, I don't think he can get over it.
no,
Uh,
they don't
so
understand.
as a
They can't,
child, because of your limited ability to process information, so it lessens the impact a little bit. But because it's so traumatic that it's almost like PTSD, you just don't get over it unless you have some kind of a therapy to figure out how to deal with it.
right.
As a 13-year-old, you understands everything, right? And that's one of the worst age for someone to experience this kind of tragedy.
I agree. I
And
mean,
you understand everything, but you can't control anything.
yeah,
And so that's what I'm saying. When you're younger, your capacity to process some information is limited. And so the impact isn't as bad as a 13-year-old, but even then, a 6-year-old or 5-year-old still have a hard time dealing with these memories, right? Imagine a 13-year-old would be like double that or 4 times that. I mean,
right. Oh yeah. I mean,
it's unimaginable. I mean,
it really is. I mean,
I can't even think how I would handle it. I don't even know how I can handle that.
you almost have to just think that their virtual maps never update to reality. Honestly, I mean, like they're just stuck in a map that doesn't meet the world. They still haven't figured out where that thing went, in their life, because they're
It's a
so young.
divergent reality. I mean, the two
Right? Yeah.
reality completely diverge because because when you have two different map that starts to diverge, and because you stop updating, or when you stop updating, and then the virtual map has its own path and trajectory, it's going to diverge, and the more diverse, the harder for you to reconcile.
Yep.
And then
If it,
you always gonna have that the traumatic experience and traumatic memory, and sometimes the memory is also filling in the blanks by your brain. They say, hey, what
yeah,
if
I don't remember shit when I was 5 years old. Do you remember anything when you were 5? I mean,
no, no.
it happened. I was asking my wife this the other day, watching Luca, you know, he interacts and communicates and you know, can carry on full conversations with you, and he's clearly cognizant of what's
Mhm.
going on and what he's saying and what he's doing. You have 4 children, you've seen this all growing up, but like, I know that that was how we were when we were that age too. I don't remember fucking shit of the stuff that I did. I couldn't tell you one goddamn thing, not a single thing.
There are certain memories that get burned into your head that you will never go away. It's so vivid because my younger brother died when I was 7. I don't remember anything other than just one thing that I did when that happened, and you don't forget it. It's like burned into your memory. I don't remember anything else. There's nothing else to remember. I don't remember that image, and that image is vivid to me. And I don't remember anything else. But because the other thing wasn't etched, wasn't burnt into your memory. But because that is a significant event. Because when I was 7, I don't know shit.
Right.
I mean, especially when you're in those kind of country, you don't have food or whatever. So you're not as well developed. And so, I mean, I don't know anything. But that memory, it is so vivid and it's still there regardless. You can't get rid of it. And
Right.
so there are certain events in memory that I think regardless of your age will still be etched into your brains. You know, because like I said, you know, beyond that particular image, that particular memory, I remember nothing else. As if, you know, besides that particular image, I'm a normal kid,
Right.
right? Just like you don't remember anything when you're 5 or 6 or 7. You probably remember just a little bit, but then it's fuzzy.
Right.
But when you have experienced something that is important to you, is significant enough, that memory is etched. It's
Yep.
etched and it's burnt. Like it's like one of those, mark the steer with, it's just
Just
so
pain is searing, you know? I mean, like, it doesn't leave you. It can't
it's
leave you.
emotional pain.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the most searing, right?
Right.
Physical pain, you forget. I have bruises all over. I have hundreds of thousands of bruises all over my body. I
Right.
don't remember, but sometimes my wife asks me, where you get that? I don't know.
Right.
But there's
Yeah.
certain emotional memories that will never leave you.
Of course. Yeah. I think that's a great point. Actually, going back to the 13-year-old, thanks for sharing that. I didn't know that. I don't think you've ever told me your brother passed away. How old was he?
He was 5.
So you're 2 years older than him?
Yeah. Basically, he and I hang out. We're pretty much compatible with one another. We go everywhere together. We do everything together. And so basically we are like almost like a pair. Like every,
Right.
you see him, you see me, you see me, you see him, right? We're always together. We always do things together. I mean, regardless, let's say I would go, and my dad would work far away, right? If he takes me, he would take him. If he takes him, he takes me. So we are pretty close. We're close as because we're compatible in terms of personality and age and whatnot. So we hang out together. Basically, we are inseparable.
Yeah.
And so I think that's is where the emotional impact affects me the most. And like I said, it doesn't go away. It just doesn't go away. I mean, every time I remember him, it becomes emotional. It's just one of those things that, it's involuntary. It's nothing you can do about it. And it
Right.
never lessens the feeling, whatever feeling that you want to call it, but that feeling is just there and you never go away.
Yeah.
So I think, when you have something that, you have more of a emotional attachment to, and for you to separate from it, it creates more like an imprint where he left. There's an
Hmm.
imprint that's missing. And so that's always, I guess, difficult. And I guess my point is that the more emotionally attached you are, the more vivid your memory will be seared into your head.
Hmm. I can't. I mean, yeah, like 1,000% agree to that. I mean, that's kind of what I've been trying to describe to you for the almost 4 years we've known each other. Of like, I can't not forget like what I can't
You
like
can't. I
the
mean,
the
I
the
mean,
the
I
purpose
mean,
stuff every single day is I can't stop doing it because it's just in my brain now. I can't undo what Amelia and
I
I
mean, I would
have
remember
done
that
and
until the day I die. I don't
right.
think it's gonna go away. It doesn't lessen the memory. When I was 7, I'm almost 45. It's almost 40 years. It doesn't go away and it doesn't fade. So I would say, based on what I've experienced so far, that memory is gonna be there until the day I die. It's just there all the time. You can recall it at any moment's notice. And like I said, I was 7. Okay. When I was 7, I was a dumb kid. I am not very attentive. I can't remember anything. I have a very short memory. I do very bad at school. I can't remember anything. If you tell me one thing, 2 seconds later, I'll forget it. Right. And so,
Right.
but even then, that particular person, that particular kid, can remember vividly what happened. And with the way that I feel, that is like very strong and very crucial.
Right. And it's not like you can process the emotional state either when you're 7 years old. You just know I had a very emotional, something very emotional happened, like something important happened
Mhm.
that that it happened, but like when you're 7, like how can you possibly
I mean, the thing is,
process that?
when I was 7, right, the memories I have is limited. Meaning, like, let's say I have memories with my brother, okay? But what I don't remember what we do together, right?
Right,
So the kind of attachment that I have as a kid is very small compared to, like, for example, you can spend a day with your daughter and you have more emotions, images with you
right,
because you have the ability to retain that information.
right,
As a 7-year-old boy who isn't very bright, right? You don't have that much attachment.
right,
But even then, even with the limited attachments, emotionally attached person, you are still serious with the memory. So I can't imagine how a 13-year-old would be able to have the ability to process everything and be able to endure and carry that kind of emotional chaos. I can't even imagine how you, as a father, would be able to do that. Because for me, as a father, it's one of the worst fear I have is there's something wrong with my kid. Right? I mean, I don't know if I can take it.
what did your parents do?
My parents, in Asian culture, we don't openly talk about stuff, and so I don't talk with them about these things, and you just have to get on with your life and you deal with it individually inside. And so I don't I don't know. I mean, I'm sure my mom has more emotions than my dad or vice versa or more expressive emotions, but I would bet it's much more painful for them.
Yeah, yeah, I feel, didn't you say you came over here when you were like
10.
10? I mean,
Yeah.
did that event have some sort of a catalyst toward,
In terms of what?
in terms of moving from Vietnam to the US?
So that is just by luck because it's not like even if you want to, you can't, right? Because you don't have the ability. Like let's say, like a lot of people do this, right? A lot of people would go and would escape, just like you think about North Korea, right?
Mhm.
You're gonna have to get enough money to pay people to get to let you on a boat where you go across the Pacific Oceans. That means that just like Columbus in a day, you don't know what the hell is going to be ahead of you.
Right,
Most people never see the shore. Okay, people see pirates and all that stuff, and so people. So the thing is, you have to have the ability, meaning you have to have money first for you even to bribe somebody to let you on some kind of boat to get over there. So regardless of the situations, if you don't, even if you want to, you can't. Even if you throw everything you have, you don't have enough, right? And so a lot of people they escape by boat, right? To different country, like whether you go to Japan, Taiwan, China, whatever, right? And some people go to US, some people they just float.
right.
Whatever luck brings them to shore is where they're gonna stay. For me, is for whatever reason, one of my my dad's sister, she was a nurse in the war, right? And so she marries an American soldier. For whatever reason, my aunt, she wants to sponsor my grandmother over because she's been living here by herself with no family for a long
Mhm.
time. So because he's an American soldier, he has more influence in terms of getting paperwork done. But then he start sponsoring everybody, right?
Mhm.
Like all the brother-in-laws, all the sister-in-law over. So I mean, he probably spawns like 12 families to come over.
Wow.
That's a godsend because the thing
Yeah.
is, we don't have to do any kind of risky, travel by boat, and hopefully you land on some kind of some you even landed, right?
Right.
This one is when he sponsors to and we just fly over. And so that's like I said, in a way that's like winning the lottery.
Yeah.
Um,
That's pretty
because
wild.
it's not like you can say, I want something and get it done. You don't have the capacity to do so. And especially when your father, is because when you are in the army, right? You have two sides, like the north side and the south side, right? By the time the war ended, the north wants to capture all the soldiers and put them into a called a re-education camp, meaning they want to brainwash you to become a communist or whatever it
Right.
is, right? And there's some people who were put in this from 1975 until like 2000.
Wow.
I mean, for that long, they
That's
call it re-education.
it's like a gulag almost or
It is.
something.
It is.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, where do you think they got that from?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a good point.
The only way to being captured and put into that camp is to get rid of all your paper. So basically, we don't exist. We don't exist. We don't have no people. He just burned everything,
Wow.
right? He just burned everything. So the thing is, and that's the thing is, when you don't have anything, it's not like you have a lot of choices.
Yeah. And you don't have anything to lose
And,
too.
and,
I
and
mean,
so that's what I'm saying is, that is part of it, but I wouldn't say that's a catalyst for us to leave,
yeah.
because it's very, I guess it's very hard to, you know, be able to do the kind of things you want to do, and especially when you have nothing, you have no name. Everything that we do, it's essentially by the grace of the people around you.
Is your uncle still alive?
No, he actually passed away a few years back. He was pretty young too. It's just, he has pancreatic cancer, and then when they took him to the hospital, it was very minor, very light. They did an operation where they just cut some part of it off. I think he died from the surgery itself, not cancer.
Yeah.
It's just
Wow.
an unfortunate thing, he was like probably 50, only 50 something.
Wow.
So he
That's
died pretty young.
horrible. Well, I just learned a lot about you today. Did not know any of
Yeah.
that, which thanks for sharing. I mean, honestly, thank you.
This is the kind of story that I say, it is an honor for me to share because, I think without the uncle, I would not be here. And I don't know if I can, like I said, when I was in that country, it's like the only way for me to escape is not to be able to receive the input, basically block out a lot of stuff
Right.
because, you're going to have to find some kind of a safe haven to bury your mind in whatever and just pretend that, don't think about. You can't, I mean, it's too hard to think about. So, I mean, you think about any kids in Vietnam like me, it's like one of those kids is that the stupidest kid because that's nothing in nuggets
Right.
because I don't think I can.
That's probably, it sounds like it's, I mean, it sounds like that's a good thing. I mean, because you didn't
And
want,
that's why I told you
you didn't,
that
yeah, yeah,
I haven't been like influenced by the cultural differences in terms of what they do over there and what they do here. So it's able to allow me to, when I come here, I feel safe. So I open up. And
right,
so I receive a lot of teachings from here, the Western world
right.
versus the Eastern world, right? So I don't
Makes
have that
sense.
conflicts.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense, honestly. I mean, it sounds like you were protecting yourself, your entire childhood, similar to the story. I mean, a little bit about like when you're that young and you just go into defensive mode and you just figure out how to protect yourself, like it
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily have to have any logic to it. It's just
How you cope
survival.
with it.
It's just
So you
survival. I
find
mean,
you any way
right,
you cope with it. And once you find it, you hold on to it to dear life and say, hey, I'm not leaving this shell. Until you feel safe, then you can go out and you can start to receive the sunshine again. Otherwise, you're inside your shell and you refuse to get out because
right.
it's too painful.
I mean, that's basically the story of Harry in a nutshell, you know. I
Hmm.
mean, he retreated into a shell and didn't come out really until he was like 30 years old. And
You imagine me as a kid, right? I mean, I was a bad kid. I get into fights every day. I get into trouble. What I do does not constitute normal behavior.
no, I
It's
mean, it
just not
doesn't. Yeah,
normal behavior.
right,
This kid is weird. This kid is
right.
like that's weird thing. I don't know where he get that from, but he's weird. And I think this is one of the thing is, you distract yourself with things you can do, whether that's to act out or to have the ODD.
Right. Oppositional defiance. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Or Harry, in Harry's case, he ran away to Africa, and
I mean, I don't have the ability to run away.
well, he ran away to the military too. I mean,
I
that
would
was
have I would have run away to the military, but
yeah.
it's not a military I can get in. When I came here, I started to open up myself to become more like I guess a little bit more normal. Before that, it's like whatever I do, it's just like the strangest thing. Why would someone do that? But now looking back, I think I can understand why. Learning from the Grieving Brain and from this book here, it's one of those things where your brain is trying its best to cope with the situations to avoid having to deal with pain.
Yeah, man. I mean, you lost your brother, you're in a war-torn country, you're in a place where you didn't feel like you wanted, I mean, that's
You're
a whole lot.
not only your to a country, but you also what you call like fugitive.
Right. Yeah. 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 I mean, yeah, that's a whole lot to process as a 7 to 10 year old,
I mean, you think about it, I drink beer I was smoke when I was 7, I drink beer, whatever. Everything. I've done it. I've done it.
Right.
Whatever is available to me, I've done it. You would try everything to distract yourself in a way.
Yeah. You should probably read this book because it sounds like you would probably relate a lot to what he went. I mean, you probably won't relate a lot to the second half of the book after he meets Megan and stuff like that. That's when the book kind of goes off the rails and it really just kind of gets bitchy. He just starts bitching about everything, and it's kind of annoying, because you're just like whatever. But the first half to 2/3 of this book is pretty much what you're talking about. So I may find some kindred soul, I guess, with him. The book reminds me, or our conversation, sorry, reminds me of, if you remember back to the book, The Happiness Hypothesis and
Hmm.
the Adversity Hypothesis, when he talks about, when you go through, this isn't a Malcolm Gladwell desirable disadvantage situation, but more of a clinical take on adversity, right? Of the adversity hypothesis. I remember Jonathan Haidt said in that book something that I can't ever forget. He said, but it's like, I'm going to try to remember the gist of it. It was something like, if one of these adverse events happens in your late teens, like 17 years old ish time frame, and you do turn it into action, and it does change your life, from these kind of a traumatic adverse situation, like something you went through, right? If like you had lost your brother when you were 15 or whatever, and then your parents left and you came to America, like that, if you said that had the same thing happen to you but just transported you maybe to when you had a little bit more agency to act on that,
Hmm.
in some way, shape, or form, versus being 7 and 10, you really can't do much.
The impact will be greater in
Yeah,
terms of what it would forces me to do because I would be able to process more of the emotional impact, but also I have the faculty and the agency to do many other things. I may go and join the military, for example. I have the agency to do that. When you're younger, it's limited, so you don't do anything so rash that it make more of a pivot for your life. As
yep,
a young kid, even I will go in one direction, there's not much I can do to change that direction too much.
right,
But when you have the agency, you can go 180 if you wanted to.
exactly.
It depends on what you decide to do at that point because the agency allows you to make any kind of direction change that you want to.
Right, that's exactly what I was getting at. Is I think there's a saying of, I don't know exactly what this is, but there's a lot of really famous outliers in this world that have lost a parent when they were around their teenage years or older, around that time frame. So it's just one of those things where it's not a desirable disadvantage to lose a parent. It's not a desirable disadvantage to lose a sibling, to lose a child, to lose anything in this world. It is not a desirable disadvantage, but it does. Truth does hold, though, right? Like it is an atomic bomb event, that can catapult you one way or another way, right? Like in Harry's case, it catapulted him in and not probably a great direction with losing his mother. But I think the point that I'm ultimately getting at is adversity at that age is always going to be life defining. I mean, it'll change everything. There's no way that he could ever be the same person that when he went to bed one night and his mom was alive, and when he woke up the next morning and his mom was dead. He'll never be. It's two different Harrys at that point in time. It's not much different than my story and probably your story now. You know, you never really shared that with me before, of your brother before your brother and after your brother, and then for me before Amelia and after Amelia. There's just two different people. I'm not the same person, you're not the same person, you
Yeah,
know.
about your lifeline. I guess trajectory of your life. Let's say he's still there, then I would be in a different path, a path that has him, because that particular influence would create a different path.
Right.
But if he's gone, then my path is not the same. It has to change because there's no one there. It has to change. It cannot continue because you have two objects going on side by side, and then suddenly the one is it disappear. Well, it can't. I mean, they don't have the other object. It just has to go. Well, something is missing. Just imagine you drive two cars down the lane, and one car disappears. You go in the middle because by nature you want to be in the center. You're not side by side no more. So
Right.
the way that you continue to move forward has to change. Cannot
It's
be in the same trajectory as it has before.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's life defining, it's life changing, it's life altering, and what you do with that is up to you. But you can't do anything until your virtual meets your reality. Like that's the one
Well,
thing I
the thing
think
is,
that
one
we
of the
can.
things
Yeah.
that I think I realized that in order for you to move on, like I say, the healing to start, is you have to reconcile something and understand that that object's no longer there. But the objective here isn't to say, well, I can decide now, right, that I do have the ability to move the object or to not recognize the object any longer. That is something that I think we as a person don't really realize that you have that ability, because people say, well, it's no longer there. I have no other choice than to remove it from my map, right? Because
Right.
people say, well, it's gone. So they mentally remove that object. Versus in the way that I see you do things, is instead of removing the object because you're too attached to it, you create another space for it in your mental map that doesn't clash with the reality.
Right.
And so you're
So
able to
no,
move on and start to heal and move on with your life, but also still have that object in your mind to have a relationship with. And I think that's something that I've learned from this journey.
I think you said it, could not say it better than that, actually. And that's, Harry eventually gets to that point in time in this book. And I think that's when he finally starts to heal a little bit. I mean, it's just redefining your map, I guess, at that point in time, and taking agency over that map. All right, we're pretty out of time, but thanks again for sharing. That was a good discussion, as always. Question we can leave with you all is, are you clinging to your past? And have you taken steps to update your virtual maps to meet reality? And then what are you doing with that going forward?
Eventually, you're gonna
Yeah,
have to reconcile. If you can find ways to reconcile sooner than later, it will help you heal sooner and also give you the ability to,
use your
um,
imagination again.
yeah, to grow, to
Yeah,
continue down a different path, but still, continue and not be stuck. And then the other thing that is, you do have a choice after you accept your new updated reality. You have a choice. You don't have to get rid of it, right?
agreed.
As long as you move into another space reserved for that space that doesn't clash with reality, it will allow you to continue to foster that relationship with, and also not having a glitch and having a clash with reality.
Agreed. Well said. Thanks everybody for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow.
Sounds good. Well, good night, everyone.
See you.
Bye.